We were recently, and I know we chatted about, we didn't have an open dialogue, but the question was proposed of two things. What was an experience you've had in worship? And it could be your first one, could be a recent one where it just was very powerful. You're like, this is something, not just a song. Something's happening here. What was an experience like that for you?
I think it's when we're on mission trip or junior high summer camp, and Spencer done played like an hour or two, and he hops off, and Nate actually gets on mic and he sings like 2 or 3 to 4 words, just repeatedly, kind of like saying, we trust in Jesus, or like, we love you, Jesus, like over and over. And it's like a different type of worship.
What did you feel kind of when that happened? Because you're right. That is a different
super close, like spiritually. It made me kind of lock in. It was different than Spencer playing by himself, and I had never heard it before. So it kind of touched my heart.
That's good.
I agree with that. Like the acoustic, like without the whole band and just Spencer playing, like it really, like, it's different. And then during mission trip, like, we're not on a time stamp of how long our worship can go. So, like, you can honestly, like really feel. And then, like, I feel like sometimes whenever it's Wednesday nights, like, I feel like we can't get into worship too much because there's people that haven't been on mission trips. So I feel like people are judging us whenever we worship. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I feel like at mission trip, everyone's there for the same reason, and that we can all, like, worship and not feel judged, so it's okay to cry.
So you mentioned something there. I think it's important. The songs are exactly the same. Like, we're not singing any different songs, but you said something that's key. The intention of the heart behind the person is different. So it's not, it could be controversial, because I know we all have worship songs we like and we don't like, and people try to act like they don't like worship songs, but there are songs I'm not necessarily a fan, or I don't connect with.
Right.
But when the heart intention is different, and you feel that corporately too, when there's like a people focused on that same, you two would say, okay, that worship just was different.
Yeah.
I've sung this song before, but it just
hit.
Yeah, it just hit way different. Yeah, that's a powerful note though. That's a powerful note, because I think some people are looking for the right song.
Yeah. I think another thing was whenever we were on mission trip at Youth World and we sang Build Your Church, and then we all just went and stood around Spencer, it was just something different.
You know, you're not the only students mentioned that. That was an interesting of the time moment in worship. What I like about worship is that it creates certain moments that can only exist if you're there.
Yeah.
And they're spiritual moments.
Yeah.
They're moments between you and the Lord and people. So it's like it's corporately something's happening, but something's also happening in you differently. And so it's Zach, what about you with worship? What's a moment maybe?
Mine was for sure summer camp, junior high summer camp. And it was, I don't know why, but me, Sharon, and Keelan, we're on top of like this big box, like on the side. And then you just mentioned, I think it was like the loss or like just grieving of someone in your family. And then just hearing that, and then on top of worship and like the whole room, I just felt like something was like going on in the room. And I felt like Jesus was there in that room.
What would you explain that presence is like? The best you can, because I know it can be kind of hard.
It felt like, how do I say this? Like someone was next to you. Someone was like, what's it called? Someone had like a hand on your shoulder. Like basically just by your side.
Like comforting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet. It's interesting. I don't always, because I'm usually on stage and doing stuff or praying for somebody or preaching or worshiping, I'm not pulling out my phone and taking a photo. I actually have a photo of you in that moment.
You did?
Yeah, Nadia took a picture of it.
Oh, yeah.
She felt like she should take a picture.
Because she came up to us after.
She came and prayed until after, but she said take a picture. So it's interesting you say that. I actually have the moment it was happening, which is a wild thought process. But I think in what I love about AY Weekend is, look, we've always done stuff at this church in the winter, always. Whether it be called Youth Con, used to be called Retreat for like 15 years. We've always done something in the wintertime. What I've found And I joke with Spencer about it a lot, though. What I found is unique because we're not able to go and do the whole camp thing because you're still in school, is that if we can get you to the gateway, which is worship, if we can get you to kind of the entrance of that, it changes a lot of things. And what I love about events like AY Weekend is that worship, I mean, we just kind of put a block in our schedule and go, here it is, message. And then there's literally a block after that goes overflow. And we go, let's see what the Lord does.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what just like a little bit of extra time in the grand scheme of your year, a little bit of extra time can mark you for like, I mean, that moment at Youth World was at least
It went over.
a year or two, but that's at least a year or two ago.
Yeah.
And think about that in the grand scheme of all the hours you've had in life in between. And that one still stands out. I love how worship, it has a long, everlasting, kind of an evergreen to it, where it has an everlasting thing. Second thing we talked about, which is if you're not, just a moment that you had where you're like the blessings of God, the goodness of God in your life, where you're like, man, I felt like God was good to me, or just there was something about God's presence, something good that was personal to you in these last few years.
It's when I came to the Ark. I think, I had not known, I've been around churches, but I've never like been involved or never really known Jesus. And then I got put like in certain friend groups that like would just invite me to a vibe night. And then eventually I found Macy, and she was very consistent going to church. She invited me to be friends with Dom.
Right.
And it really brought me back to like, and it introduced me to more than what I thought I could have. Yeah. So the opportunities that he kind of gave me seem special.
So it's kind of like the goodness of God is the guidance of his hand in your life.
Yeah. Like when people talk about
that's good,
following God's path, I kind of felt like that was a step in God's path.
That's great. That's great.
I feel like I've always been in church, like growing up. Like I started at a Baptist church whenever I was younger, and I felt like I didn't really connect there. Like I didn't feel how I feel whenever I'm around like the youth leaders here. And so then I started coming to the Ark in like the 3rd or 4th grade, and I wasn't too connected. But I think it was also because I was young, and it's really hard to connect from such a young age whenever you don't understand what you're reading in the Bible. Yeah. And like I still don't understand. Like I still struggle whenever I read. But as I've like gotten older and I went on mission trips, I've found myself like really connecting, and I feel like it's God that's pushed me to like continue going to the Ark, because I feel like back whenever I was younger, it was a chore to go to church, and it felt like I wasn't excited to go to church. But whenever I come to the Ark, I'm excited. And I think it's because God has shown me the like relationships that I can grow with the people around me.
That's sweet. That's sweet. I like that perspective. What about you, Zach?
For me, it was probably mission trip and then like connecting with the kids. One kid, I said this before, it was about Dylan. And then first day, I think he said a cuss word about God or something.
Right.
I was like, what? And then, and after the week went on, I was just like, I don't know if I'm be able to do this. And then one day he brought me a drawing. Apparently it looked like me, it didn't at all. But, I actually have that drawing. It's a bookmark that I use for my Bible. And then the last day, I didn't know I was going to be able to do it, like to connect him with God, because he's saying all these bad things and bad jubi or whatever it's called. And then I was taking him home, and he just said, God is good. I was like, dang. Like I actually spread the love of God, and I just felt like God helped me on that, and then directed him into his life.
That's sweet. Bro, you got me on that bookmark. I got a little emotional. As a dad, I think that got me a bit. But those are all, what I love about those are all really different. Very, very different. Very different understandings and experiences with God. Different places you're coming from, where you're like, I've seen it, never involved, always was in it, didn't connect. And then yours was like, you're doing it, and it's connecting at the same time. You're like, all right. And what the encouragement here is, the Lord really meets you where you're at. And it shows how personalized it is to you. And life can feel very lonely, and our disconnect with God can sometimes feel very lonely. And so I love that he found you in a way that made sense to you. He didn't do the same thing he did for you. And people can get in comparison, but why would you want it? Look at all the tapestry that makes. Look at all the colors that brings to someone understanding like God's going to meet you in a way and bless you in a way and help you in a way that's specific to you. And that makes sense. All this comes from, and these questions come from what came from the inspiration of what we're sitting in, AY Weekend's theme, which is just a really simple scripture out of Numbers. And when Israel's celebrating, God just blessed them. And here's the thing. It's really interesting. They weren't complaining. They didn't really do anything good. He just blessed them anyways. It's a really small passage. And it says, and they started singing. They just reacted. And a song came in them and it said, spring up, O well, sing to it. He blessed them with water. They weren't complaining they needed it. They weren't also doing awesome. He just was being himself. And I love that he just blessed people because of who he is. And so I wanted to talk about the goodness of God and how it varies. And I also wanted to talk about worship because it's the two things that came from that passage. Just the goodness of God because of who he is. And they worshiped him out of what happened. And so I think you guys did a great job. Great perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.